Connecticut?
I'm presently living in Manchester, Connecticut, yes.
And which war did you serve?
Iraqi Freedom. Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Which branch of the service?
The Air Force.
What was your highest rank?
Senior Airman.
And in which general locations did you serve?
Al-Udeid Air Force Base in Qatar is where I did my tour. And my home base was Hill Air Force Base, Utah. I was studying computer programming and computer science at the University of Central Florida. And I also was going to walk on to the University of Central Florida football team before 9/11. And I was in class studying calculus and C++. And there was a great what can I say? The day at school seemed very sad, and it seemed very gloomy day at school. And then I went home and I saw the incident on TV, 9/11, and I felt patriotism take over, and I wanted to go in to a part of the military that I could help stand up for my country and be a volunteer, so the people that didn't want to volunteer would be able to sit home and not do anything and not really worry about life and death. But the patriotism and the love of jets for the Air Force and the things of that nature, which I grew up around. I grew up around Avon Park bombing range, and that's an Air Force a practice range where they continuously do sorties and bomb targets to take to missions across the world. But the main reason was because of the bombing and just the great dilemma that was given to our country and the attack of innocence. That's what really gets me, that people would attack New York where there's a lot of innocent people, and things were horrible.
So 9/11 was your motivation. Did you enlist immediately?
Yes, it was a very heat of the moment. As soon as I saw it and heard it, and I saw that they needed help, and they were starting to get more people to come into the military, so they needed more people to do Operation Iraqi Freedom. So I signed up, and I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks. And next thing you know, around November 1st, I was headed towards basic military training in Lackland, Texas.
Wow.
With his mother screaming, "Don't
Shh.
until you get your degree!"
And at the time you were going to college in Florida?
Yes, I was going to college in Florida.
Why did you pick the Air Force?
Well, the Air Force was a great place because of the bombing range and stuff. And when I was younger, I used to go outside with camouflage on and pretend that the Air Force bombing range was actually the backup for me. So me and my friends would run around and be like, "Here comes the Air Force. They're dropping bombs." And we just called in air support. And I was always fond of jets and things of that nature. I love jets. That's just something. I love speed, fast machines that are lethal. That's why I love the Air Force.
And where did you go for your basic training?
Basic training was Lackland, Texas.
How many weeks was that, and what kinds of things did you learn?
Lackland, Texas, I think it was either 8 weeks or 4 weeks. I'm not really sure how many weeks. It was about a month to 2 months. But we learned preparation for wartime scenarios. We learned how to work together as a wing, as a flight. And I think we made it to Warrior Flight, was the top flight. Our flight was the second flight in BMT. So we had a really good group in BMT. We were at number one for the longest time for the number one flight while we were coming through. But then some arguments and supervision, and people started to argue and stuff, and we kind of fell down in the flight. But we almost had number one there. But at BMT, we also learned just survival techniques, how to put on gas mask, how to interact in shooting scenarios where people are firing guns, how to shoot guns, everything you would need to to give you a chance in the war zone.
Did you, when you were in basic, did you fully expect to go to Iraq?
We knew, yes. The basic military training after 9/11, everything was intense. It was time to go to war. A great devastating blow to the nation has happened, and it's time to enlist. And we were going right into the battlefield. We didn't have that much training or anything, where other troops had a lot of training before 9/11 that were in there. We were the groups that came in for 9/11, and we were ready to go. But I knew the first night I was there, it was a totally different feeling when you're about ready to put your life on the line and you have people with you and you could be missing people. It was very intense feeling there at the BMT right after 9/11, because everybody was pumped up and ready to go defend the country, whatever it took to get this job done for this horrific event that was delivered to us on 9/11.
Where did you go after your training at Laughlin?
At Laughlin, I went to another base and I started training for the avionics technician CDCs, which is Air Force Code career field 2A3352. But I went to another base, and it was about a year and a half of training where we worked on F-16s. We went over the TOs, the technical orders. We learned all the different systems. We learned how to put everything together, take things apart, learn the computer systems, the different codes. It's a really hard career field, but I tested high, and they really needed help in that career field because it was a tough one and strenuous, and it has the most studying of any other career fields to study the airframes. And I could fix a F-16, a stealth, or a UAV Predator.
Now, what base was that? Where did they transfer you?
I really do not remember that base I went to. And I was looking over my stuff, and I'm not really sure. It was outside. I still remember passing Waco, Texas, because a lot of crazy things happened there. So it's somewhere.
It's still in Texas, though?
It was in Texas, yes. And it was past Waco, Texas. It's probably still there, where they're still training avionics technicians today, but I'm not sure of the name.
When did they test you to decide what they were going to train you in?
That's whenever.
After basic or during?
Well, before basic. Before you go in there, you take the ASVAB, and that generally directs you to the career field that you'll be going to in the Air Force, and that's basically where you're either going to be in electronics or you're going to be a pararescueman or something of that order.
So you knew going into basic training you were going to be in avionics?
Well, yes, but I also tried out to be a PJ, a pararescueman, because I was training for the University of Central Florida's football team. I tried out, but I wasn't quite up to my laps and things like that in the pool and running. I was more power and stuff because I wanted to be a tailback at UCF. But I did try out for the PJs, and I was very proud to try out for that elite force of airmen.
At the air base where you learned your avionics, were you fully, after the 18 months, you were fully qualified to work on those 3 aircraft? So you could go anywhere and fix those avionics systems?
The avionics systems, yes. You're fully qualified, but it's an onward progression for the avionics technician. He continues on with all his training, and you keep adding on to it. So it's a very large system. It's probably like 35 CDCs just to get to a 2A352, and then you get 35 more CDs if you get up to a 7 level past the sergeant. But I was only a senior airman and made it to 2A352.
After your training from there, where did you go?
From there, I went to Hill Air Force Base in Utah.
How long?
I was at Hill Air Force Base, I believe, for almost 2.5, 3 years.
So tell me what your life was like for those 2.5 to 3 years.
2.5 to 3 years. It was a good place. I did a lot of volunteer work, so I was always being put up for awards, or not put up for awards, but being being put in for awards, and I would always volunteer, maybe Red Hot Chili Peppers, Slipknot concerts where I'd be a security guard, or the snowboard competition at Park City, Utah. So I did a lot of things working on the jets, and I also did a lot of things in the citizen world for volunteer work to help alleviate strains between veterans and citizens, and or active duty vets that are serving and the citizens. So a lot of volunteer work. Working out, I climbed mountains, loved to go fishing. What else did I do? I went back to school also, so I was also studying business, which I should have been studying computer science again, but I was studying business there, and just kept myself busy and studying my CDCs and moving up, volunteer work, and a lot of good things.
What was your typical day like? Did you have like a 9 to 5 working on the aircraft?
Typical day, I sometimes worked on day shifts or mid shifts or night shifts. The typical day, I think, on the day shift would maybe be from 9 to 5, like that, and then there would be 10 to like 3, and then there'd be a gap in there. I'm not really sure about all the times anymore. I really don't remember everything from that time period. But I was an expediter. I expedited, I think, about 3 times at nighttime, and I had 23 jets under me, and I had all the other career fields. So I was an avionics technician, and I had engines, electronics, and some other people, and I would have the discrepancies on my folder, and this is the trouble with the engine, with the electrics, with the avionics technicians, and you'd actually go jet to jet and supervise the work while people were working on them. So I was an expediter during night shifts for a little while.
Expediter?
He expedites the work just to make sure everything's maintained and
Supervisor?
A supervisor, yes, to supervise the work on the jet and make sure it's finished in a timely manner, to make sure everybody's safe and running, watch out, and you report to the other person in command. I'm not really sure who it was, but yep, basically a supervisor of the flight line. So I did that 3 times, and that was a great thing for me. I felt very accomplished once I got to drive the truck and actually run the show.
Did you live on base or did you live off base?
I lived off base, and I lived in an apartment complex, a couple of them, and before I left the military.
Do you have any memorable stories or incidents from your time at Hill Air Force Base?
I did have a heart broke jet. That's a big thing. A heart broke jet. Heart broke? Like heartbroken? Yeah. Almost like, you're heartbroken for something. But we had a heart broke jet that none of the technicians, none of the 7 levels or the 5 levels, and about 30 different ones worked on it. And it was a PSP, and it was a bad wave guide and some cannon plugs and screws, and it sat out there for about a month. It never made it on our tour, and we were home watching the jet, but I fixed the heartbroken jet. That was a very memorable time where I knew I was standing out amongst the maintainers that couldn't quite fix the jet, and I fixed it, and it flew code 1. That was a very memorable time for me to fix a heartbroken jet.
What's code 1? Code
1 is it went up on a sortie, it came back down, and there isn't anything broken on it.
How did you know what was wrong with it?
Well, that was the thing. Sometimes even all the technical orders and everything that are issued to you, sometimes it's just not in the book, and you had to really look and take out the multimeter and take the bulkheads off and test in between wires to see different things. And sometimes it could actually be in the LRU itself, and there could be circuitry that's malfunctioning in there. And sometimes it could be circuitry, and if you have 4 or 5 LRUs in a line and one circuitry's off, so it's almost like it gets sometimes like a Rubik's Cube, if I could say that. And I was, just going back and forth with different LRUs, and I never gave up on it when people were like, I still can't find it. I still can't find it. And it was handed down for a month from shift to shift to shift while the other ones were going. And that's why it's called a heartbroke jet, because you rarely have them. You rarely have them. They're usually 2, 3, 4 hours fixed up, ready for sortie again. So when it jets out there for a month, it is, everybody's like, oh my God, this is a heartbroken one. I can't believe we can't get it. It's not in any of our TOs or anything. We had civilian engineers. We had everybody on it. But that was one of my memorable times when I had that. And another memorable time is in the war zone when I won my airman's medal. It was an unbelievable time for me to stand up and be patriotic and save some airmen that were down inside a fire and a fuel fire. And I pulled 3 people out: a pilot, a civilian engineer, and a sergeant that was passed out in the fire. So that was also...
Where was this, in Utah?
That wasn't at Utah. Oh. I kind of skipped over there to another memorable moment when I was in Al-Udeid Air Force Base in Qatar.
Oh, so that happened in Qatar?
That happened in Qatar, yep.
While we're on, I wanted to discuss that a little bit. So you received the Airman's Medal for this incident that happened in Qatar?
Yes.
So describe what happened.
There was an incident where there was an AF-16 coming back off a sortie with live munitions, 500-pound bombs, all loaded to the T because he didn't run a sortie. And there was just a runway incident. He came back on the wrong side, and it collided into another aircraft, which sparked an AIM-9 missile and a fuel leak. So the AIM-9 missile, a civilian engineer was working on that, trying to put that out with a halon fire extinguisher, while I was working on getting the pilot to safety and getting the sergeant that I was working on in the jet to safety. He was actually in the cockpit and got hit by the other F-16 while I was working on the hydraulic test stand, and I couldn't even see over the top of it, and it slammed into me, and I jumped out of the way, and a fuel fire came out, and I made sure everybody was safe. Then I went back in and turned off the fuel fire to make sure that it didn't continuously explode. And also I went back in and I lifted up. He was from Vietnam. He told me, I remember Baldwin, I still remember it to this day. He's like, I don't want to leave the jet. I'm going with the jet. I'm like, you're not going to die on my watch, Baldwin. And he was trying to put out the AIM-9 Sidewinder missile with halon. And I'm like, you're coming with me. And I went in there and put him on my shoulder and took him to safety. And then, thank God, no continuous explosions happened. And the fire trucks got there and they put everything out. But I still received a great stressors from that incident and the dehydration and the stressful incident of working on the flight line. And I received a lesion permanently on my right eye for going back in there, which is throwing stuff off for a while. But I'm back up and running with my lesion. But that was a very memorable. Memorable time for me to stand up for my country and save them in a clutch situation. It was like winning the Super Bowl for me, winning the Airman's
Medal. Where were you? Did you see the aircraft coming in?
No, I did not even see the aircraft. I would not even have thought that the aircraft would come back down on this side that we were working on the flight line of jets. But
so the first you knew was...
The first I knew is when I was looking down at a test machine, a hydraulic mule that ran the flight control surfaces. So I was working with 3,100 PSI, and I'm looking down and I'm running the machine while we're doing the ops check on the F-16 we're working on. And I think there was 80 people out there come flying by me because we were pushing the jets back. And 80 people come flying by me, didn't even tell me that there's an F-16 fully loaded Sidewinders 500-pound bombs about ready to hit me like a bull. When I was blindfolded, I couldn't believe it. And I was sitting there, and as soon as I saw them, I looked over the test stand, and I saw the jet, and I jumped out of the way super quick. And then the F-16 collided in things that you can't even, not in any technical order, or any kind of engineer couldn't believe that this even happened. So arcing and systems and things almost exploded, but the fuel fire was put out, people were saved, and it was handled very quickly. And everybody was so happy and very proud of me. And that's what won me my Airman's Medal.
Back at Hill Air Force Base, so you continued on there. Where did you go after you left Hill?
Hill Air Force Base, well, I began to come down with a little bit of PTSD. So I got discharged after Hill Air Force Base, and I came back home.
No, but when you were at Hill, before you went to Qatar, you went from Hill to Qatar?
Hill to Qatar. I only did 5 years. So I was at Hill and Qatar. That's it. I came from Lackland to the training school to Hill Air Force Base and then to Qatar. And then that catastrophe that I intercepted really put a lot of weight on my shoulders and had a little bit of PTSD.
How long were you at Qatar?
Qatar, we're there for 5 months.
So in the 5 months before that catastrophe, what was life like? What were your...
Oh, at Camp IUD?
Yeah.
It was good.
What was it?
Camp IUD. And Qatar, it was good. It was really strenuous. Now, this was a hard tour, and we lost a couple of jets, but some people that served 20 years, I remember them saying when we were having a few beers that this is the hardest tour. The jets are really acting up on us, and this was a really hard tour for us because we had about 2 or 3 dust storms, and oh my God, a desert dust storm. This was my first time ever in the desert encountering one of those where the sands of the dunes in Al Udeid in Qatar come up, and you have Oakley goggles on, and you're sitting there and you're trying to work on the jet and pull out PSPs, GACs, and things like that. And you can't even see your hands. You have to put your hands almost 2 inches away from your face to see them. So when it was like that, a lot of stuff was like memorization, that this part and this cannon plug went on there. But we couldn't understand why, we're having issues with jets. But I still think it was just the extra sand and stuff. I don't think they were really built to go through that much sand, even though they're built for anything. But it was a stressful tour. It was really hot. People would try to shoot from the fences, inwards on the base, and you would hear sometimes a car bomb come up to the gate where the SPs, the security forces, they would get on the guns and boom and kill the guy and stuff. But we had a couple cars from terrorists hit the gates and people shooting. So it was kind of really the full deal. The war theater was full blown work, almost 16-hour shifts, nights and days. A little oasis where you could have some beers and stuff like that. And I was still testing to upgrade to pass my senior airman. I won below the zone in the desert. I got to meet the other allied forces. We played volleyball. We worked out in the gym. It was my first time to really meet the other dedication from the other countries. I think there's about 12 alliances there, or allied countries, and it was a really interesting time, and I'm still very proud of my service, but it's kind of intermittent. I don't really remember everything. I remember a couple things here and there. Like I said, I had PTSD issues for a little bit after I came back home.
Now, describe the base for me. What was your base? What was the size of it? What was the purpose of it? Was it just aircraft? Was it just fixing aircraft?
Al Udeid is an Air Force base, so we maintain the fighter squadrons that are Army backup, Marine backup, anything that's on the ground that was in Iraq going through the city. They would call us for air support, and we'd hop over the Persian Gulf, hop over the pond, and give them air support. But there were also cargo planes. It also had other international links in the base, and also Air Force One also came there, but I don't think it was stationed there, but that's the base they used to look at Iraqi freedom.
You were there when Air Force One landed at one time?
Oh, yes. I was there when the president came in, and it was a great honor. It was for people with good conduct during the war trip, and we went out there and we got to meet Joint Chiefs of Staff Peter Pace, Colin Powell, G.W. Bush, General Franks. I received this dog tag from the Devil Dogs Marine Corps, Peter Pace. He slapped it into your hand and you would salute him. And it was really good. Some people dropped these. I didn't drop mine, but he was riding on Air Force One, Peter Pace, and he was the Marine Corps Joint Chiefs of Staff. Very proud to have this for good conduct, and that was such a treat to meet DC and the top people.
Wow, that must have been something. Now, you said that you had gone below the zone. What does that mean? Can you tell me about that?
Below the zone is when you're an airman first class and you're testing on your CDCs and you continually to make the upgrade as a journeyman all the way to a senior airman. And below the zone, most people have to put on the extra stripe after airman first class, the senior airman stripe, at the same time, but at the same time. But below the zone is about 8 months to 6 months earlier before everybody else does. So it's prestigious. You get a pay upgrade. So it was a good time, and I was very proud for the work I did in my academics and my work I did on the jets, physically doing the work.
So to get that accelerated upgrade was because of your academics and your work?
Yes, and my volunteerism and the things I did in society. There are many things to win below the zone. You have to be the full troop, the full airman to get everything and put everything together and be represented as the United States American Air Force Airman, as the Airman First Class below the zone, and putting on the rank Senior Airman early. Yes.
You were in Qatar when you went below the zone?
Yes, I was in Qatar. So I had other allied countries there it was a great feeling to not only be there with my flight, but our squadron, but there were other squadrons from around the world that were also there rooting me on whenever they gave me my award.
How big was that base? Are we talking hundreds or thousands?
How big was the base? I think we had maybe 50,000. I'm not really sure. I'll give a ballpark 50,000. But we had Camp Alsea, the Army base, which was an R&R base, and everybody was there. The Navy.
Was that close?
It was close. It was within 15 miles, I think, within 10 miles. So that was another base that was in the area, but we were the air support base. So maybe 50,000, maybe like 80,000 at Camp Alsea. I'm not sure what the name was. That's a while ago.
On your base, was the air support, so you had, was it all F-16s?
On our base, no. We had F-16s, we had British Tornadoes, we had F-15s, we had French jets, we had Canadian jets, we had all the Allied nations jets with us.
Did you work on just the Americans?
I worked with just the Americans, and we talked avionics from the different airframes from the different countries, but I was strictly avionics, Air Force, United States of America.
Was avionics one part of the base, and so you had to have the aircraft who were doing air support for the missions, the aircraft that were working, were they in a different part of the base?
Nope, everything is on, it's an air base, so everything has a flight line, it has a munition spot and stuff like that, but everything is kind of over on the flight line, and then you have all the other facilities that run with air command support, and that's about everything, which is the air support, air command at LUD.
Now, did you live on the base?
Yes, we lived on base in tents.
So let's talk about the living conditions on base. You were in tents?
In tents, yes. No, we didn't have barracks. This is almost a set-up place, and this was camping out. So we had bunks and about a 80-foot long tent. It had air conditioning, and we had little sections with I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 8 bunks in little sections through the 80-foot with about 60 to 50 people in the tent. And there were probably maybe like 300 tents. There were tents. It was a tent city.
Wow. How did you stay in touch with your family when you were over there?
Stay in touch with the family. We had the World Wide Web. We had telephones, so we could exchange email. And we could call. We had video phone, so you could also sit in there if you had a video phone and talk back and forth.
So how often were you in touch with your family back home?
My parents, maybe once or twice while I was there, and that's about it. And I really concentrated on the mission at hand.
Did you email?
Yep, I emailed and I used the telephone. I had video chat, but my parents didn't. So, and my other family.
What did you do for food? Was there a regular dining facility?
For food, there was a regular dining facility, yes, and there were also MREs when you were on the flight line. But there was a bus, that would come pick you up and take you to the dining hall, and take you back out to the flight line. But yep, plenty of food to eat. We were always well fed and always watched over and ready to go.
Vytis, how about supplies, equipment? Things like that. Were there any shortages? Did you have everything you needed?
Oh yes, everything. The logistics of the Air Force Base were 100% perfect. We had supplies, fuel, everything, armament, everything was there, food, everything was logistically perfect. It was just a really hard tour with the storms and the dust and the heat. I think we had engines. Engines have a thermometer they shoot on the engine to make sure it's not too hot. But when they shot it on the tarmac, when we were in the desert, it was about 130 degrees. So I think dehydration set in on me too, and I didn't realize that because we were pushing ourselves. The jets broke a lot. That's what I mean. It was so stressful. There weren't too many code ones. I don't think there were, maybe like 20 in 5 months or 7 months, however long we're out there, but that's not a lot. So we were stressed and worked in the heat, and I don't think we drank enough water, and I don't think anybody even thought about drinking more water. But I had a Camelback, I was drinking water, but I should have drank more water. I think that was one of my downfalls that I dealt with later in life, that I was dehydrated and stressed. But everything was there. Logistically, everything was perfect. Just really hard. The jets weren't cooperating.
What time period was this that you were in Qatar?
I think it was during the summertime. So it was maybe like from a February to like in August.
What year?
September. I have the tour deployment right here. 2 cycle and 1 and 2. What year? Let me see. I have it on here. When did we deploy? 2004. That the year was that it happened. It's dated in there somewhere.
All right, we can find it.
Okay. Yeah, let's do. But yeah.
How did you handle the pressure of the job?
The pressure of the job. I worked out. I ran. I was running like 5 miles and working out and stuff. And I think that's the other reason I should have had more water and I wasn't maintaining and stuff, because of the stress of the constant break. And we played video games. We played, I think it was Tour of Duty or Battlefield on our computers and stuff. I read, did puzzles. There was a coffee house. Played cards. There are a lot of other activities, and you really need them in the war zone, because anything is just a glistening of hope, of happiness when you're doing the deed and eliminating the enemy. It was the most stressful event I've ever been in my life, and it was just a full power, and the enemy is being defeated and stuff. But there was a lot of stress, a lot of breaks on the jets, and just random things, books, video games, talking to each other, reading, exercising, beer.
Did you do anything special for good luck?
Me, I was a chapel rope in the military, and I was a comedic in the war zone. So I prayed a lot. I prayed a lot to the sun god Ra and the other gods and goddesses.
Did you see any USO shows while you were in?
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe I forgot the USO shows. Yes, wow, thank you for saying that. Yeah, the USO came and the entertainers came, and it was such a relief to see them because they looked like little bundles of happiness in the war zone. We had the Budweiser girls, we had professional baseball players. I shook Robert De Niro's hand, which was really cool. He was in the desert there. I was like, I'm a fan of your movies and stuff. So Robert De Niro was there, and a lot, the Budweiser girls. There was a couple other famous musicians, athletes, basketball stars, yes. And they were just bundles of happiness, like I said. I was just glad to see them.
Did you ever have any leave or R&R while you were over there?
R&R, yes, R&R. We did have that for I think it was 2 or 3 days, or maybe it was a day. But I finally got out there, and that was such relief to get out there on that.
Where did you go?
I went to the Ritz-Carlton in Dubai. It was kind of a little bit more expensive than most people went to, but we all chipped in and we got a room. I think it was up really high in Dubai, and we were like, oh my God, it's not a tent, it's the Ritz-Carlton room. So we were so happy to get such a great treat like that in the desert. And there was a swimming pool, and the Ritz-Carlton was so accepting to the soldiers. They showed us around. They let us use all the facilities. They had a walk-in jacuzzi. Oh my goodness, it was so beautiful. And they had all these little things that you could take drinks from. And they had a beautiful swimming pool and a beautiful bar and stuff. And we had designated drivers so you could have a couple and stuff. And after the Ritz-Carlton, we had, I think, the room to like 3 or 4 o'clock. And then we went to the mall. And they have a mall in Dubai. And we walked around there. And then from there, we went back. But yes, I thank you. I just remembered that. That was a great day.
You recall any particularly humorous or unusual events while you were over there?
Humorous events.
Or unusual.
Or unusual. Well, the dust storms were very unusual to me.
How often would that happen?
Those would happen maybe like once or twice or every 3 times a month, maybe. Or maybe like 3 times we were there. I've had nightmares before about dust storms, so it maybe happened 3 times in the 5 to 7 months we were there. But that was unusual. What else was unusual? It was just a tour of war, so there wasn't too much unusual. You were prepared and trained for most of the things that would happen, and prepared for the consequences of the climate conditions and stuff.
Were you ever in combat while you were there?
Nope. We're F-16's avionics technicians. We are on the flight line, and we don't get into the actual conflict because it's far away and we're air support.
What was your opinion of your fellow service members?
Everybody was good. Different walks of life, you know. You had city people to country people, in between people. And I really didn't judge anybody. Everybody was really, you know, ready to protect the country at all times. There are good guys, though. I mean, I risked my life for about 80 of them, so it was good people there.
What was your opinion of the officers?
The officers were good. Everybody makes mistakes and stuff, but otherwise, logistics and the pilots were great, and the command was good. Everybody was well-groomed and, not well-groomed, but well-groomed in logistics and planning for the trip and stuff. It was a tight squadron, and everything worked out pretty well. So I served with a bunch of good Americans.
Did you stay in touch with any of those?
Some people from the avionics technician group, and some people are still in the Air Force today, and some people took other jobs, aeronautical jobs out in the workforce. But yeah, a couple people I still have on Facebook that I have said hello to, but we lost a couple people from suicide when we came back and stuff. So there were some really bad stories, that injuries beyond the war zone, which was really bad there for a little bit. But we're starting to said some prayers for the ones, rest in peace, the people that didn't make it and stuff like that. But otherwise, I keep in contact with ones that are still alive, and I have said hello, and I do have contact information, but everybody's in a new life now. So people came together for 9/11. We joined up. Everybody was coming from everywhere to volunteer to defeat the enemy. And it's still going on as we have it today. But I did my tour, and I still keep in contact with my people that I did the tour with.
Now you said on your base were other allies of ours. So did you interact with the other squadrons, the other
countries, the allied countries? Yeah, we played volleyball. Like it would be their avionics people against our avionics people, and or have a couple beers and talk about what life is like in their country. And I was grateful. I told a couple of countries, we are grateful in America that you are helping us out, because that's a tragedy given to the United States of America, and our allied nations did show up.
Are there any other memorable experiences from Qatar?
Yeah, that's good.
We had Marine One, so Air Force One. The president comes in on Air Force One. In our hangar, we took time off to do security protection and stuff. And we had Marine 1, which is green helicopter, or Marine 2, I'm not sure. I think it's Marine 1 or 2. But yeah, so we had to protect the helicopter while it was...
Who landed on it?
G.W. Bush.
He came 2 different times?
Yeah, well, he comes on the jet and he uses Marine 1 to tour around. So he can go spot to spot with his helicopter, and he comes in with the jet.
So what were you doing with Marine 1, guarding it?
Yep, we took turns going over to make sure it was safe, and it was maintenance. And 421 Kiss of Death Squadron, that's us. We made sure it was in a safe place.
Any other memorable experiences from Qatar?
Any other ones?
You'll think of something later when I...
Yeah, probably. The incident and getting the dog tag from Joint Chiefs of Staff from DC and the Pentagon, and anything else.
Now, I know you got the Airman's Medal. Did you get any other medals or awards?
Yes, I have the Achievement Medal for my maintenance, my superior maintenance on the crafts. I also have a Good Conduct Medal. And I have my other medals that just go along with my assignments and stuff like that, like my National Defense Service Medal, Global War on Terrorism. But that's how they put your ribbons on your best to your other ones. So mine's the Airman's Medal, Air Force Achievement Medal, and Air Force Good Conduct Medal.
Do you recall your last day in Qatar?
Oh, yes. I remember my last day in Qatar. It was a hard journey, like I said. The jets were broke all the time. And we were going home. I could not wait to get back home. Just sit on that plane and know I was going back home. And it was just a great feeling to have the relief that you made it through war and didn't die. Because when you went on R&R, that's another place I went to. Camp Al-Saya was the R&R camp where they had the USO tour, so I was over there too. But that was the other thing that when we were talking to other people on the R&R, like the people that were in more of a combat situation than the avionics technician, they lost people and stuff. So no, we were always glad not to lose anybody to death. We may have lost a couple of jets, but nothing, no tragic airman loss or anything like that. Everybody got pulled out, and whenever they shoot it out and stuff.
When you flew home, when you left Qatar, did you leave as a unit or as an individual? Did your whole unit go at the same time?
Our whole unit went at the same time, yes. We got on board and left.
And where did you go from Qatar? You didn't fly straight back to the United States?
No, we went to Spain, so we had a stopover in Spain. I think Germany and another place, and then it was back home. I think we went through the California way, so it might have been somewhere on the Asian continent or somewhere, and then all the way back to California and then Hill Air Force Base.
So you went back to Hill. How long did you stay at Hill after you got home?
About a year.
Did you go back to your old job and your old life at Hill?
Yes, I'm still an avionics technician, doing support and stuff like that, working on all the different airframes and continuing on.
How did it feel? Was it different now that you've been overseas and been to war and then come back home? Did it feel any different to you?
Oh, yes. The patriotism and respect you feel for the country when you put your life on the line and you actually go over there and eliminate the enemy. I am part of the Veterans Affairs VFW right now. I'm a lifetime member, and I'm going to continue on with my patriotism on every Veterans Day and Memorial Day. But I feel like I've given to my country a lot, my life, and I have a couple injuries and stuff, but it feels good. I felt American before, but I feel more attached to the country that I served. I served the Operation Iraqi Freedom.
What was your homecoming like? Did they have a homecoming for you?
The homecoming was good. Everybody that was married, their wives and people were there, and then the other people from all the other places that came over, a couple of TV stations and stuff like that were there. So the homecoming was nice. It was nice.
When were you actually discharged from the Air Force?
In 2006.
2006, you were discharged at...
From Hill Air Force Base, and then I came back home to stay with my parents before I tried to go back to school. And I have my injuries, and I went to the Veterans Affairs Hospital.
So now you are living in Connecticut and going back to college?
Yep, now I am living in Connecticut and working with the Veterans Affairs with my disabilities. And I'm going to Manchester Community College back to studying computer science. I had disabilities that I had to work through for about a decade, but I have a good support team for the rest of my life, and I'm going to continue onwards with computer science and Manchester Community College.
Are you using the GI Bill for your education?
Actually, I have a disability, and I am disabled, so I can use the vocational rehabilitation, and they work with my disability team, and I work with vocational rehabilitation and stuff to go back to school.
Vytis, how would you say your military experience influenced your thinking about war or about the military in general?
War or the military in general, how did it influence my thinking? It's a horrific thing. We should always think for peace and a better place to be together. May God unite the earth one day and keep all nations and all countries and all people safe. But there are bad people on the planet that do terrorist acts that attack innocents, and they must be eliminated. And I have a more well-rounded understanding of the entire obligation of an American citizen as a volunteer to protect the people that don't want to volunteer. And the whole thing, I still think in case of great needs, like Harry Truman used an atomic bomb, which we frown upon nowadays, but to save American lives and, in cost-efficient ways, hydrogen bomb seems like a correct way. Because I was injured and I lost people and stuff, and I know if you do that, you don't lose your loved ones and you don't lose American citizens going that route. But it's very inhumane, and I just know the war is horrific, and the quicker you get it over with, the happier everybody is.
Now, I know you said you joined the VFW. Did you join any other veterans organizations?
Nope, just the VFW right now. And as I continue on with my disability staff at the VFW, or not the VFW, but the VA, I hope to maybe be a commander of a VFW, because that helps future soldiers by us keeping with the citizens and of America and help doing volunteer acts and Veterans Day and Memorials Day, keep those and interacting with society, high schools and children, making sure they speak to the veterans that do put their lives on the line for them, and to reassure the public that they are protected. So I plan to stay with the VFW for the rest of my life.
How did your service affect your life?
Well, the service affected my life. I kind of upseated and went in where I was studying to be a computer science major, but I did come back injured with a couple things, a couple mental illnesses and stuff, which were really hard. But working with the VA system, I've went through many different routines and regimens to help me get back up and running. And like I said before, I'm all the way with the vocational rehabilitation. If you would have asked me about 2 or 3 years ago, I would have been really out of it. So I've been struggling and I've been coming through, but it has put me aside for a decade of where I should be out here. But I'm beginning to catch up with my peers, and I would do it again in a heartbeat to save America. Yes, in a heartbeat, to make sure that things were safe and catastrophic events didn't happen. I'd do it again if I was healthy, but I'm not healthy anymore.
Vytis, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any other memorable experiences? Anything we have not discussed yet?
Everything is not really. Everything is just going back together, and just glad to have made it through that tour, and glad to have made it through some of my mental illnesses, and glad to be here and giving this interview for future people so they can see as a couple of the events that happened during Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Well, Vytis, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.